Well, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you had a great lunch and you've had a great week so far here in Barcelona. My name is Wally Mead, Program Manager for the SMS Product Group. I've been with Microsoft 15 years and been working with SMS for 13 of those 15 years. How many of you are at my session on Tuesday on deploying sites? Oh, I needed to see a lot more hands than that. Should have seen everybody's hands. All right, okay. So the vast majority of you anyway. So this is kind of part two of the session I did on Tuesday. So Tuesday I showed you how to deploy Configuration Manager, extend your Active Directory schema, how to verify your site prerequisites, deploy a site. Then we went ahead and deployed a reporting point and a software update point and set some boundaries. So that's where we left off on Tuesday's presentation. So we got the site infrastructure up and ready to roll. Today what we want to talk about is how you get those clients into your site. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through various different methods of deploying clients. So again, hopefully the vast majority of you, which you were at the session I did on Tuesday for MGT324, I have the number up here, so if you get the slides later on, you want to go back and look at that one if you weren't there, it's there. Obviously having knowledge of Configuration Manager from that session or numerous of the other sessions we have this week is great. SMS 2003 knowledge is applicable as well because a lot of you are going to be doing upgrades for that. We had an instructor-led lab on Introduction to SMS V4 or Configuration Manager 2007 and interactive sessions that I've already had so far. So again, what we're going to talk about today is just an overview client deployment. There's some new things in Configuration Manager that you have to know about as far as prerequisites for deploying clients as well as the client deployment process. There's some different things we do in the site mode and the site server that may or may not impact how you're deploying your clients. So we'll give you that background first, then we'll talk a little bit about the site system roles that are involved in client deployment. I'll try and do that fairly quickly for you. Then we'll go into the different client deployment methods. We'll start real quickly with the client push deployment because you guys are all familiar with that from SMS 2003. And I'm going to demonstrate one of those for you, specifically on a Windows 2000 client to show you what happens there. Then we're going to look at some of the new deployment methods. Software update point client deployment, the ability of deploying clients through a WSUS server. Then we'll look at group policy client deployment, stuff we didn't really have in SMS 2003 that worked really well at all and works great in Configuration Manager. So I'll walk you through the different methods of doing group policy client deployment. And then client upgrades, because the vast majority of you are going to be upgrading from Configuration Manager or from SMS 2003 to Configuration Manager. So we'll spend some time on that as well. So first off, the supported clients. A number of you probably have clients out there that we're not going to be supporting anymore with Configuration Manager that we do support with SMS 2.0, if any of you have that around anymore, or SMS 2003, some of the different service packs. So the lowest level client we support in Configuration Manager is Windows 2000 Service Pack 4. Anything previous to that, not supported. For your Windows XP clients, we do not support Windows XP RTM or SP1. We only support Windows XP Service Pack 2. For Windows Server 2003, it's Service Pack 1 and Service Pack 2. Windows Server 2003 R2. We also support the business versions of Vista. So those that you would have in a corporation. So business, enterprise, ultimate. So no home, no premium type stuff, that stuff that you'd have at home. So the business or corporate versions of Windows Vista. Now somebody's going to wind up asking, so I'll answer the question now. When I say not supported, what I mean is our client will not even install on these unsupported operating systems. We specifically block in the Configuration Manager client, when you try and install on a Windows XP SP1 client, it will not install the Configuration Manager client. Windows 2000 Service Pack 3, we will not install. We detect the OS version, and if it's not one of these supported OS versions, we cancel installation. So we bail out right away. So you can try it if you want to, but you're not going to be successful. I can tell you that. So those are the versions you have to have. Oh, by the way, this talk is going to be on desktop type clients. I'm not going to go over mobile clients. I'm not going to go over the embedded space. Now I have them listed here and on another slide coming up, but I'm not really cover how to deploy those. This is going to be on your laptops, your desktops, your server type systems, getting the normal SMS client or Configuration Manager client installed. We do support Windows XP Tablet Service Pack 2, Windows XP Embedded Service Pack 2, Embedded Point of Sale or WePOS, and then Foundation for Legacy Platforms or WinFLP. So some of the SMS 2003 issues that you guys have run into over the past years on deploying your clients. A lot of people use client push, very, very popular method of deploying clients. Some of the issues people ran into were largely revolved around firewalls. In that when you got to Windows Vista, Windows Server 2003, Windows XP Service Pack 2, all those that had the firewall pretty much installed and enabled, you had issues with pushing through the firewall. You had to have specific ports open, you had to have specific applications or utilities allowed through the firewall to get that push process to occur. You had to provision an admin account on your client systems. Configuration Manager, as well as SMS 2003, requires admin rights to install. So you had to make sure in a push process you had a remote administrator account on that client computer. There were multiple different binaries installed. So some of you would launch off client.msi to install your client. Others would launch off ccmsetup.exe. Others would launch off capinst.exe. So numerous different methods to go ahead and get your client installed. Others would do the client push and so on. So lots of different ways to run, numerous different binaries. So there wasn't necessarily consistency in how you installed your client. You did different methods to accomplish different tasks, which was okay, but it made it a little more harder for your people that were doing the installs because they had to learn different techniques for installation and different utilities and how they operated. The client installation was not bandwidth sensitive. So in other words, if you were trying to install a client over the slower link, it was an SMB push basically down to that client of client.msi, and then we'd install over the link. So there's no bandwidth sensitivity at all. And lastly, there was no visibility into the process. You kicked off a client installation. 10 minutes later, you go to your admin console, do an update of the collection membership, do a refresh, and it still says client equals no. Why? You wouldn't know why. You'd have to go out there and actually look at each individual client, look at its log files, ccmsetup.log, you'd have to look at clientmsi.log, and look at the log files, and maybe even client location, client ID manager startup, location services, CCM exec log. Numerous different log files you'd have to look at to see where you were at in the client process, why this client is not reporting in successfully as being a client. So a lot of different issues around the SMS 2003 space in client deployment. So let's talk about how Configuration Manager will help resolve some of those gotchas that we labeled them as, or issues that you had, and some of those other environments. So first off, this is a list of all the client deployment methods that Configuration Manager has that you guys already know. The things that you know from SMS 2003 today. So client push is still there. Extremely popular method of deploying clients. There's the automated push. You turn it on site-wide. Any system that's discovered that's assigned to your site, it's a supported OS, will go ahead and initiate a push from the site server. Still there, still works exactly the same way. There's also the admin controlled, or the client push installation wizard as we call it, where you would go to a collection, select a single system or the entire collection, right click and say install client and run through the wizard, and we deploy the client out for you. So a little more control over the client push process. Still there. One thing that has changed here, however, is that you can now use your computer account as your client push installation account. So you can, if you don't specify an account on the Accounts tab, and I'll show you that coming up in one of the demos, if you don't specify an account, we'll automatically try your site server computer account. Now, it still would have to be an admin on that remote box, so we still require admin rights, but if you did that, then you wouldn't have to list any other account. Logon installation for high rights users. Now, SMS 2003 actually did support logon installation for low rights users if you ran capinst. So we had the capinst utility that would let you kick off with the low rights user. If we detected low rights users, we'd create a CCR, which then kicked in this client push method. So we still have logon installation, but it's only for high rights users. We have no logon installation process for low rights users in Configuration Manager. That's a change that you need to be aware of. Software distribution, still there. When you guys are doing your upgrades, probably the most common method you're going to upgrade your clients from SMS 2003 to Configuration Manager is through software distribution. And I'll demonstrate that at the very end of the presentation because you guys all know how to do that. So I won't spend a lot of time on that. And then, of course, there's manual installation. You kick off a command line utility manually to go ahead and install your client, just like you could do in SMS 2003. Just there were numerous different utilities you could run. Capinst, client.msi, CCM setup. Now there's only one utility. So here are the new methods of client deployment that are in Configuration Manager. One of the ones that people are really excited about is the top one, Software Update Point Client Deployment. This allows you to publish the Configuration Manager Client Bootstrap as a mandatory application update in WSUS. And the next time those clients scan against WSUS, they'll see that this is a mandatory application update. We'll kick off our Bootstrap program, and that client will be installed as a configuration manager client. Nothing else you have to do. It's great because you don't have to worry about firewalls because you already got Windows Update Agent going through your firewall talking to your WSUS server. You don't have to worry about admin rights because we run in the context of the Windows Update Agent, which is local system. So all those issues on that one gotcha slide are taken care of. So great way of deploying clients. People are really excited about that, and I'll demonstrate that for you later on in the presentation. The next way that people are really excited about deploying clients is through group policy. In SMS 2003, people tried to do group policy deployment, but we didn't really support it. And when you tried to do deployment, you do client.msi as your group policy that you're kicking off, the utility. Well, when you run through group policy, you don't have command line parameters. So you'd run client.msi, it wouldn't get assigned to your site because the default was SMS site code equals nothing unless you specified. So your client could get installed, but it wasn't assigned to a site. So then you had to go manually touch every client and assign it to the site you want it to be assigned to. If you happen to remove that group policy, what happened? It deinstalled or removed client.msi, which deinstalled your client. So lots of problems there. So now we have a fully supported procedure for you to install clients through group policy that will not deinstall if you happen to remove that group policy later on. So I'll show you that in a demonstration later on as well. And that utilizes a utility called ccmsetup.msi, a new MSI that we have. You are not allowed, for those of you that deploy clients running client.msi manually, you cannot do that with Configuration Manager. We will not let you run client.msi to kick off a client installation. So those of you that is your method today, you're going to change methods when you get to Configuration Manager. Okay, supported client numbers. These numbers didn't really change from SMS 2003. We support up to 25,000 clients per management point. We support up to 100,000 clients per site. So obviously, if you only support 25,000 per MP, if you want to get to 100,000, you have to have multiple MPs. You only have one default MP in your site. So that would mean an NLB cluster of up to 4 MPs to get you up to 100,000 clients. That's the same as it was in SMS 2003. We've got some numbers in here for the new site system roles for you. System Health Validator, which none of you really have right now because of the fact that Windows Server 2008 isn't available yet. But that will support up to 200,000 clients, which is the same as our hierarchy. So in a single hierarchy, we support up to 200,000 clients, which handles the vast majority of our customer base. Now, we do have some customers that are needing to go beyond that. And today, we're still limited to 200,000 clients in a single hierarchy. So it's multiple hierarchies to support larger environments. Distribution points, really limited by your disk and I/O, depending upon what type of packages or images as a package that you're deploying. So really it's your disk, your network, I/O, it's a really limiting factor there. For branch distribution point, the big key there is limited by your OS licensing. If you do a branch DP, we're limited to however many licenses your OS supports on that branch DP. If you use a Windows XP system as your branch DP, that's 10 connections. If you use a Windows Server OS as your branch DP, it's whatever number of licenses you have for that Windows Server. It could be hundreds, could be unlimited, whatever you have for your licensing. And then obviously it's disk and network and et cetera. Software update points, which are obviously key to Configuration Manager. You've seen a couple of presentations on them already. Same as a management point, 25,000 clients per WSUS server or software update point. If you want to get to that 100,000 in single hierarchy, you NLB cluster your WSUS servers or software update points. So you can put them in a cluster to get you up to 100,000 clients per primary environment. State migration point, again, it's a storage location for state migration information. So it's, again, disk and network information. And fallback status point, up to 100,000 for a site. Okay, so the components that are used. So that's kind of the background stuff. Now we're going to drill into more of the details on how clients are deployed. So these next few slides are going to be on the components that are actually installed and the actual installation, assignment, registration, and approval process in the environment before we get into really actually doing the deployment stuff. So CCM Setup. CCM Setup is your single tool for installing clients. So we still have client.msi, CCM Setup calls it. But if you're going to do a manual installation, if you're going to do a logon script installation, if you're going to do a client push installation, if you're going to do a group policy or a WSUS installation, they all run ccmsetup.exe. Now, group policy actually runs ccmsetup.msi, which calls ccmsetup.exe. So in the end, it is CCM Setup that is your Bootstrap program. So a single utility that you use for everything. You notice in the middle there, it also says uninstall, install, uninstall. I'm sure the vast majority of you right now are familiar with ccmclean.exe. You don't need it anymore. So if you want to uninstall a configuration manager client, you do ccmsetup.exe/uninstall. So there is no more CCM clean for configuration manager. So it's CCM setup/uninstall, and that will uninstall your client just like CCM clean would do. And then upgrade it. Obviously upgrade your client from SMS 2003 to configuration manager, or when we get to Service Pack 1 next year, it'll upgrade from RTM code to Service Pack 1. The next big component involved in your client deployment process is bits. We actually require bits, and we actually use bits on your client to download the rest of the client components. So on these next couple of slides, I have a lot more client components that are involved in installation. And we download those from the management point or some other source that you designate utilizing bits. So the first thing we do when CCM setup kicks off is we validate you have bits installed. And our minimum level of bit support is 2.0 for a Windows 2000 client. If it's not there, we install it. On Windows XP client and Windows Server 2003, it's bits 2.5. On Vista, it's bits 3.0. So if a minimum of bits 2.0 is not there for Windows 2000 and bits 2.5 for XP, we go ahead and install bits 2.5 for you automatically, or bits 2.0. Now, we won't downgrade a Vista client to bits 2.5. We'll leave the bits 3.0 that's there. We actually provide bits 2.5 and bits 2.0 in our client deployment bundle that you download from the internet. So if you went to my session on Tuesday, you saw that client prerequisites had to be downloaded from the internet, and you could download them manually and store them locally, which is what I did. In that, there's like 87 files. Something like 80 of those 87 files are all different bits versions and bits languages. So we kick off CCM setup, we immediately install bits 2.0 on a Windows 2000 client. That requires a reboot. We require bits to be fully functioning to install anything else in the client. Because again, we use bits to download the other components. So in a Windows 2000 client, bits 2.0 requires a reboot. Bits 2.5, no reboot required as far as getting it active to be able to download other components. So that's the first thing we do. Once we've done that, then we go ahead and install other components. So we have a new version of Windows Installer, Windows Installer 3.1 version 2. And there's the KB article if you want to go pre-deployed. You can do that if you wish to. But we'll go ahead and download that and install it automatically for you. Windows Update Agent. Because we're using WSUS as our patch technology, we're ensuring that all of your clients have the Windows Update Agent version 3.0 installed. So we're going to go ahead and install it if it's not already there installed in your clients. So we'll install the WUA 3.0. Again, it's in our source files. And then core XML services, so MS XML 6 Service Pack 1, which is msxml6.msi. We'll go ahead and install it. That's a requirement as well. MSRDC, or the remote differential compression component, that's utilized for branch distribution points to allow you to do the binary differential replication or binary delta replication. So we install that on all branch distribution points except Windows 2000. That's why you can't use a Windows 2000 client as a branch DP, because it doesn't support the MSRDC component. So we install it so you have the binary delta replication for your branch DPs. So we install it. WIM-G API is used for APIs for OSD. So we install it automatically as well. Then obviously the Windows installer for the actual client itself, client.msi. So these are all the files that you can get installed as you install your client, starting with when you run CCM setup, downloading and installing bits, and then we install all these other components and install them locally if they're not already there with a current or later version. So it does take a little while to get your client installed because it's got to go out there and get those. Now the nice thing is, remember one of those gotchas from the SMS 2003 environment was client is not bandwidth aware. We are utilizing, went too far. We are utilizing bits for this download. So bits is bandwidth aware, or at least network adapter aware. So you do have some level of throttling there that you do have. And checkpoint restarts in case you have to restart your system in the middle of that process. Okay, so we hit all those. Okay, so you kicked off CCM setup through one of these different methods we're going to talk about. You got all these components installed locally on your client. Client.msi got installed. So your client is now installed. The next thing you have to do is get that client assigned to a site. One of the big things you have to be aware of is that configuration manager clients can only be assigned to configuration manager sites. Some of you are in the habit today in SMS 2003 of pre-upgrading your clients. So you haven't upgraded to SMS 2003 Service Pack 3 in your site, but you upgrade your clients to SMS 2003 Service Pack 3 to get them ready so that when your site is upgraded, your clients are all done. Because an SP3 client will talk to an SP2 site, or an SP2 client will talk to an SP1 site. You cannot do that now. You cannot pre-install the Configuration Manager client in your SMS 2003 environment. Well, you can, but you no longer can manage that client until you upgrade your sites to Configuration Manager. The Configuration Manager client will only be assigned to and download policies from a Configuration Manager management point. Now, once you've got your client installed and assigned to a Configuration Manager site, that Configuration Manager client can roam down to an SMS 2003 site, query its MP for content location, and find content on a distribution point. So it can do that, but it can't be assigned to a Configuration Manager site. However, SMS 2003 clients can be assigned to your Configuration Manager site. So you can go ahead and upgrade your site servers to Configuration Manager and then go through the process of upgrading your clients. Absolutely fully supported scenario. And you don't technically ever have to upgrade them if you don't want to take advantage of Configuration Manager features on those clients. In that scenario, highly recommended that you're running SMS 2003 Service Pack 3. There's a couple of gotchas or a couple of issues to be aware of if your site's still running SMS 2003 Service Pack 2. So you do want to be running Service Pack 3, especially if you're using Vista clients, or you're going to be utilizing native mode. If you're going to be utilizing native mode configuration or Vista clients, you absolutely want to be running Service Pack 3 of your SMS 2003 environment. Okay, so part of this client assignment process is the client's going to validate that the site you're trying to assign it to is a Configuration Manager site. Because again, we won't let you assign to an SMS 2003 site. So we have to do that validation. There's only two ways we do this validation. And this is extremely important. If you guys get nothing else out of today's presentation, you want to get this. In that, when we do this client assignment validation process, we look to Active Directory first. If your site's Active Directory has been extended for Configuration Manager and you are successfully publishing Configuration Manager data to Active Directory, then we can do this assignment validation through Active Directory. If that's not possible, so if the client can't get the AD, you haven't extended the schema for Configuration Manager, for whatever reason you're not publishing to Active Directory, then you have to have a SMS v4 or Configuration Manager server locator point in your site that the clients can get access to. You guys have all done this in SMS 2003. You go to a client, you install them, and you manually go to the advanced tab. You type in the site code, click OK, and the client's happy. Now, it may not be able to find the management point and so on, but the client will accept that. That will not work in Configuration Manager unless one of these two things can happen. We can get to AD to validate that site code, or we can get to an SLP, which can get to the Configuration Manager site database to validate that site code. If we can't do one of those two things, that site code we will not accept. And that client will be unassigned until you give us a site code that is valid for Configuration Manager. In the TAP program, which I worked with for the past couple of years with customers, this is the biggest problem they ran into in client deployment. They didn't want to, their AD teams wouldn't extend the schema because they were still in Configuration Manager beta, or SMS v4 beta back in the beta 1 and beta 2 days. So their AD teams wouldn't let them extend the schema because they were afraid of putting a beta scheme extension into production. So they were still SMS 2003. And those that didn't already have a server locator point in their sites, all their client assignment process would fail. And we just have to go and have them install a server locator point in their Configuration Manager site, tell the clients to use that SLP, and bingo, their client assignment process worked perfectly. So they all went to the point of installing SLPs until they got their AD schemas updated. Now, personally, I would go ahead and install a server locator point anyway, even if I was successfully publishing to Active Directory, because you're probably going to have clients in different forests than your site server's in, so they can't read the data that's published into that site server's Active Directory. Or maybe they're workgroup clients, so they can't get access to Active Directory anyway. Or maybe just for whatever reason, the client's having some sort of communication issue and can't get to a domain controller to do this validation. So I would still put an SLP out there, even though you don't technically need one in that scenario. Okay, so this is extremely important. Your process will fail here if you don't get this done right. So you install your client, it gets assigned to the site. The next thing that happens in Configuration Manager, and this is all new to Configuration Manager, this was not a process in SMS 2003, is client registration. Because we have higher levels of security and configuration manager for client identity now, each client has to register in the database. So the process of registering in the database is once the client's assigned to the site, it finds the management point for that site, and it sends a registration request to that site, which includes the client's self-signed certificate. So this is a mixed mode scenario. So it will create the client self-signed certificate, and it will go ahead and send that into the site. The site will then go validate that certificate, place it into the database, and then send back a valid registration request back to the client. Here's the public key that you're going to utilize to send data to me, type stuff. If we can't register the client is not going to be able to communicate. It might be installed, it might be assigned to the site, but it can't communicate until it is registered. You'll see this in the Client ID Manager startup log file. So those of you that like to look at log files, Client ID Manager startup log file, you'll see the registration process occurring. And if we can't register for some reason, you'll see client registration failed, retrying. And I think it retries every 10 minutes, I think it is. So you just see a lot of retries until you get the actual registration stuff taken care of properly. In a native mode environment, we still do registration, but it's registration using the site's certificate through PKI as opposed to the client self-signed certificate. So basically, we're giving the site the identity of this client so that we can then validate it later on. In SMS 2003, we didn't really validate clients. We just accepted any client sending data up to the MP. Now, I know with Service Pack 1, you could turn on client data encryption and data signing. And when you did the data signing option in SMS 2003 Service Pack 1, that was kind of the process of this, of doing the registration. So this is the next step in the process. And the last step in the process of getting your clients installed is the approval process. Approval is only a requirement for mixed mode. In native mode, you don't have to worry about approvals. But the vast majority of you are likely going to be in mixed mode environments, so this is an important topic for you as well. A client must be approved in order to utilize a network access account. So if you have any software distribution scenarios, or you want to deploy any OS deployment task sequences, you may have to utilize a network access account. The network access account, which used to be called the Advanced Client Network Access Account, is used for accessing distribution points when there's no user logged onto the computer, and the client computer's computer account is not valid to access the distribution point. For example, clients in different forests that are untrusted, or workgroup-based clients. Or in an OSD task sequence scenario, you're running into WinPE as your operating system, which is not domain joined, and there's no logged on user. So in those environments, you can't access your distribution point. So you'd have in SMS 2003, the Advanced Client Network Access Account, which is now called the Network Access Account in Configuration Manager. To retrieve that network access account, your client has to be approved. Everything else works outside of this. So even if my client's not approved, it can download other policies. It can download advertisement policies or software update configuration item policies or configuration items for DCM or send hardware inventory data. All that stuff still works. This one thing doesn't work. You can't get access to any policies that require or that specify the network access account. So that's an approval process you have to go through. There's 3 different methods of approving clients. There's automatic for everybody, and there's manual method. And I think my next slide is I'm going to show you how to do this instead of just talking about it. So those of you that were at the presentation on Tuesday, this is This is the same site server that I had on Tuesday. I only did one thing different than what you guys saw on Tuesday, which is I created a dashboard. Other than that, I still have the same site server. I added in the 2 boundaries we created on Tuesday, and I added in the software update point and reporting point. So that's where we left it on Tuesday. So the client approval stuff is a site-wide parameter. So you go to your site code. You go to your site, and then you go to properties on your site. I don't know, my screen is doing that, but there we go, properties. So go to properties on your site, and you'll see you have some new tabs that you didn't have in SMS 2003. When your console responds, you'll see that you have some new tabs that you didn't have in SMS 2003. Anybody know any good jokes while we're waiting? They'd have to be in English, otherwise I wouldn't understand them. And I still may not. Well, this is exciting. There we go. That's what's happening. It's trying to create a secondary site, which it should not be doing. Let's go ahead and cancel that there, wizard. And we just want to look at our site. There's our site properties. And let's go get rid of this guy. Don't know how he started, but anyway. So Wake on LAN, which is new to Configuration Manager. You had ports, you had advanced. Site mode is new, and that's where we're talking right now. This is where you change your site from mixed mode to native mode, or from native mode to mixed mode. And you can see I'm in a mixed mode environment, and in the middle of this dialog is your approval settings. You can see the default approval setting is automatically approve clients in trusted domains. So any clients that are in domains trusted by my site server are going to automatically be approved. The other options you have are not recommended, but automatically approve everybody. So any client that sends data to my site, go ahead and approve it and let him join my site. I'm happy with everybody. And obviously less security there because you're accepting everybody. The most secure option, however, the most overhead for the administrator, being you, is the manually approve each client in the database. So you have those three options. The default, again, is to automatically approve those in trusted domains. That's what your default option is. And if you have clients in other forests, likely they won't get approved automatically. You just go to the admin console and you approve them manually. The other option you have here that's important that you know is this site contains only Configuration Manager 2007 clients. You guys will likely be clearing that option during your upgrade process, because if you leave that option selected, your SMS 2003 clients will no longer have an advanced client network access account, and they can't use that network access account to access distribution points, or, well, they can't run task sequences anyway as SMS 2003. So that's an important option for you. And then if you happen to be in native mode, and I'll just kick over here, I don't have native mode, but you notice there's no approval settings here at all in native mode. So it is only a mixed mode scenario. So if you are in a mode where you have to do manual client approval, how you would do so is go to your collections. And then once you find your collection, you would go ahead and view your clients in your collection. And I don't know what my laptop is doing. Oh, you know what I should have done? I probably should have turned off our antivirus software. What's happening is my antivirus software is looking at every single change I'm doing to the VPCs and saying, hey, I need to scan this. I should probably go in there and turn that off. Anyway, so go to your collections, and then you'll see we added a column in here for approval, approved. And so here's approved. Now, the options you're going to see here are NA, which is not applicable. It's not applicable to approve a system that's not a client. You can only approve client computers, so it's NA. The other options will be, when we get clients deployed, will be approved or not approved. And if you see a client that's sitting here and the client column says, oops, that's not the mouse, that's the clicker. If the client column says yes, but the approved column says not approved, then you would select that client and you would right click, and then you would choose the approve option, which I don't have here because I'm not a client. But you just right click it and approve it. You can multi-select if you need to. So you can multi-select non-approved clients, right click, and then approve them. That's how you would manually approve clients if you needed to. Okay, so that's kind of the background stuff. Now let's talk about site systems that are required for client deployment. Site server is required because of client push. The automated client push stuff happens from the site server out, as well as the registration process happens through the site server. So it's kind of involved in client deployment. Management point, used to download binaries from the MP down to the client for installation. So use the MP. And also after you're installed, you retrieve policies, you do your registration through the MP and so on. Server locator point, used to validate site assignment if you're not publishing Active Directory. So you guys all know that now. Distribution point, use that for software distribution upgrades of your client. So you'd use a distribution point, which could be also a branch DP. And if you're doing OS deployments. So if you're installing clients through OSD, then obviously you're using distribution points. Software update point. If you want to use the software update point client installation method, so you want to install clients through WSUS, you're using a software update point. And I'll show you how to do that. And fallback status point. The fallback status point is used for sending state messages where the client is in the client deployment process. And I'll show you that coming up here momentarily. There actually is one more that I don't have on here, that'd be a Pixie service point. If you're doing bare metal client deployments through OSD, then using Pixie service point, so WDS. Oh, it's right here on this slide. So I did have it. And state migration point, if you're migrating from old hardware to new hardware, possibly through a Pixie service point scenario, or possibly through a software distribution scenario, it doesn't matter, but you want to migrate your state information. You do that through a state migration point. Okay, so here's just a graphical representation of those site systems. On the left-hand side, those three in the white are the ones that you knew from SMS 2003. The gold or yellow ones, whatever color you want to call it, are the new ones for configuration manager that are used. Okay, so let me show you. We highly recommend that you have a fallback status point in your site. So it is a very good recommendation to follow through with. We do want you to have that, and I'll show you the benefit of the FSP once I get this installed and we get our clients installed. So I'm going to go click new roles. I've already filled in my FQDN for the intranet. Come on, slide on up so I can get to the next button. There we go. And then fallback status point. It's a very simple configuration. You specify how many state messages you want to batch and send to your site server at one point in time. The default is 10,000. And then how often do you want to send those batch of state messages to your site server? The default is hourly, 3,600 seconds. Now that's fine in a real live environment. So every hour you're taking up to 10,000 messages and moving across. In my demo, however, we don't want to wait for an hour. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this down to every 2 minutes. The shorter this is, the more processing time it takes on the site server, because you'll be sending more state messages continually, so it's going to spend more time processing state messages as opposed to batching them and processing them all at one time. Now they're very small files, so they're not big overhead, but we do recommend the hourly as a default. And that's it for configuring a fallback status point. So very, very simple. Now, once you have a fallback status point in your site, you then need to go ahead and tell clients to use that. If you're using Active Directory publishing, then we have it published in Active Directory. And I'll show you other methods to tell clients to use an FSP coming up here momentarily. Okay, so now let's get into client deployment. Let's get into your client deployment methods, and let's push out some clients, or let's install some clients. First, we'll do client push. Client push is essentially the same as it was in SMS 2003. So those of you guys that know what it is in SMS 2003, you're extremely familiar with it for Configuration Manager. Almost exactly the same. A couple of differences are the default is now SMS site code equals the local site code, where in SMS 2003 the default was SMS site code equals auto. So we did change it to the local site code now. So that's one change. And then again, the second change is your client push account can be your site server's computer account, which is not there in earlier versions of SMS 2003. We no longer use the remote registry service. So in SMS 2003, you had to have the remote registry service running on your boxes so we can connect up to the registry and do some work. We're now using WMI. So remote WMI access has to be allowed. So in a client push, you have to have remote WMI enabled in your clients. If Active Directory is extended for Configuration Manager, the client push parameters are published to AD. So that's very cool. It should be very exciting for you. What that means is if you're publishing to AD, any parameters you specify on your client push installation properties get published to Active Directory. What that means to you is you can now install any other client just by running CCM setup manually with no other parameters, and it will be installed the way you want it to, using those parameters that we're publishing up to Active Directory. So very cool, makes your job a lot easier. You don't have to worry about admins mistyping the command line, typing in the wrong FSP, or typing in the wrong management point, or typing in the wrong site code, or misspelling the parameter. It's now published to Active Directory. So all other deployment methods use these values published to Active Directory other than client push. And the reason client push doesn't use them is that you specify them on the client push parameter. So we use what you specify in the client push process itself. Okay, let's go show you a push process. So you saw my all systems container or collection. I only have one computer there, which is the site server. It gets discovered by default. So we need to do some discovery. You can't push to a system that's not been discovered yet. So you have to have a system discovered. So I'm going to go ahead and discover through Active Directory system discovery. I'll just go enable that real quickly. And go to my local domain. I'll take everything from the domain. And then I'll say do discovery right now. Notice in Configuration Manager, you can also specify additional attributes for Active Directory. So any Active Directory attributes you've created and publishing to, you can go ahead and discover those as part of your discovery process for systems as well as users. So we'll go ahead and let him run. While he's running, I have to prepare client push. Oops, did I click OK? Yeah, there we go. So I want to go ahead and specify my client push installation method. So let's go configure him. You need a push installation account. I didn't make my site server computer account a local admin on my client, so I actually have an account I'm going to use. I'm not going to use automated push. Honestly, the vast majority of our customers don't do that because you might get systems pushed out that you don't really want pushed out to, so most people use the manual method that I'm going to show you. So I'm going to go ahead and specify my account. It tells you up in the text, which you can't see now. Now you can see. If you can read that text, it'll tell you that we'll use the computer account if no other accounts work. So SMS domain, and then it's client push, my password, my secret password that you guys don't know. Well, maybe if you've taken one of my labs, you know the secret password. And then anything you put here on the client push parameters gets published to Active Directory. So you can see the default now is SMS site code equals MCM as opposed to auto. I'm going to also go ahead and say FSP equals, the other equals, SMS server. So that's going to go ahead and publish that. I could put in my log level, I could put in my cache size. Oh, by the way, if you guys don't know, your cache by default in Configuration Manager is now 5 gigabytes on the client instead of the 250 megabytes it was in SMS 2003. And the reason for that is we want you to use OSD. It's pretty hard to do OS deployment in a cache scenario with a 250 megabyte cache. Like 0 images fit in 250 megabytes. So all of your images are hundreds of megabytes, if not gigabytes in size. So we'll go ahead and specify that. So it publishes these guys to Active Directory. For our other installation methods. So our client should have been discovered by now. So we'll do an update of our collection. And give that a second to process. Wait till my disk activity goes away, down here in the lower left. And then we'll do a refresh. So I'm going to push out to one client, and I'm going to push out to a Windows 2000 client computer. And the reason, I apologize for not remembering to kill that. Wonder if I can kill that now. Task Manager and kill our antivirus software, see if that speeds things up. There we are. Corporate's probably going to see that I'm turning this off, and they're going to say, hey, why are you turning off our system, our antivirus software? You guys don't tell them I did it, though, okay? All right, so we got some systems here we've been discovered. SMS Client 2 is my Windows 2000 client, and I'm going to push to him specifically instead of the other ones because this is a Windows 2000 client. It's going to cause a reboot because of the BITS 2.0 installation. So I want to show you the state messages that get created and the reporting that gets generated from that. So we'll go ahead and get him pushed off, and then we'll momentarily, and then we'll go ahead and look at the client running, and then we'll stop and we'll go to other methods and we'll come back and see him. Don't have to include domain controllers, it's not, and it's not installed yet, so I don't do an upgrade. So a pretty short wizard, much shorter than it was in SMS 2003 because we don't have any legacy clients to worry about. Okay, so on our Windows 2000 client sitting here, if we load Task Manager, we should, maybe I didn't do Task Manager. There we go, Task Manager. We'll go to Processes, and we should see CCM Setup running here. There's CCM Setup. So it's running. It's going to be installing BITS 2.0, which we may be able to catch it here. There it is. BITS 2.0 is being installed right here. As soon as it's done installing BITS 2.0, CCM Setup's going to stop. It's going to terminate, and it's going to send a state message that says, hey, I need a reboot for my client. State messages is to show you where they go, so you can see that file popping in here. It appears in your management point, in this case, FSP staging. So the state message is going to go here for that 2-minute timeout, my time to batch them over. And that will go ahead and send that over to the site after 2 minutes. So we'll go ahead and let him process. He should be killing here rather shortly. It looks like we're still installing BITS 2.0. So we'll come back and look at him so we keep things moving because I've only got half an hour left. Okay, so we'll come back and look at him momentarily. So the next method we want to look at is software update client installation. So this is the method that allows you to utilize your WSUS infrastructure, which if you don't have now, you're going to have for Configuration Manager because you want to deploy patches, and you really need the WSUS infrastructure to do this. Allows you to use WSUS infrastructure as your method of deploying clients. So again, basically, this gets around the firewall issues and gets around those admin rights issues that you have with client push in the past. And you still have those today. You still need an admin account. You still have to have things open up in your firewall. But this is one way of getting around that by utilizing the service that's already through the firewall, which is the Windows Update Agent. So basically, your client has to be pointed to the software update point via group policy. And I'll show you that in my demo here coming up momentarily. The basic process is you as the admin turn on software update point client installation. So you turn on this installation method. We then publish our configuration manager client to WSUS as a mandatory application update. Next time your client scans against WSUS, it sees this mandatory application update and installs ccmsetup.exe, which is our bootstrap program, kicks off the rest of the installation process. So very, very simple. There's not a lot of configuration or anything you have to do with it. It actually is extremely simple to do. Let's go back over here. You can see, click our client, CCM setup is done. CCM setup has been terminated on the client. So I'm going to go ahead, let's go ahead and see if the state message has been processed yet. State message is gone. So let's go over here and show you real quickly before I kick off the reboot of the client. I created a dashboard which just shows the reports that I want to show you. So I'm going to run the dashboard, which there's 3 different reports that I'm going to show you. And I'll open them up in a new window so I can keep them running. So this will launch off a web report or a dashboard that has 3 web reports in it. The first report is going to be the client failure report, and then a couple for client successes. And my client failure report should have 1 entry in it right now, which is my client saying, hey, I couldn't install because I need a reboot. Okay, so maybe it wasn't the antivirus software that's causing the slow down here. So there's my client deployment failure report. It says SMS client 2, and the reason for the failure is a reboot is required to complete the installation. So if we kick over to the client computer, let's go ahead and kick off a reboot on this client. So restart. Oops, go the other way. And no successes and nothing in progress. So nobody was successfully installed yet and nobody in progress. We'll see numbers here later on. My failure rate obviously is not very good. So I got 100% failures on client deployment. This is not what your goal is with client deployment. You guys want to have a much lower number than 100% failures. What you want to have is a really high number over here. And what's not good here should be sitting over here and in progress. But we'll change by the time we get done here. So trust me on that. Okay, so we'll leave that dashboard there. So now we want to go back to our software update point. So for software update, what we have to do is go to client installation methods, and we have a second method now, software update point client installation. Very simple process. You just go to the properties of this installation method. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I sorted and clicked the wrong one, didn't I? I didn't mean to sort. So I want that one. And you just enable it. It pops up and says, hey, you have a later client than what's in WSUS right now. Do you want to publish this newer client in the WSUS? Well, there's not one in there right now. So it shows you the current version. The published version, there's not one. So the RTM version is the latest version. So I'll say yes, and that's going to go ahead and publish this into WSUS. It's a fairly quick process. It takes about a couple of minutes for this to get published into WSUS. For those of you that like to watch log files, the log file that you would look at is on your site server, and the log file is wcm.log. And even though my initials are WM, it's not C in the middle, so it's not for me. So when WCM log gets updated, which it just did, but I don't think that's there yet, then it will publish the client. So we'll just go validate, but usually it's not quite that fast. It'd be surprising if something happened faster than I was expecting with this demo. So it's connected to the database, but it's not published yet, which is what I expected. So while we're waiting for that, let's go over to our client, which I'm going to push to my member server, and it has to point to that WSUS server. And it doesn't currently do that, so I'm just going to go in there and manually point it to my WSUS. But you would do this through group policy. So I'm just going to go to gpedit.msc, and I'm going to tell my client to go to software, go to administrative templates, and then I want Windows components, and I want Windows update, and let me get rid of the extended stuff, so standard, and specify Internet Microsoft Update Service Location. I have to enable this, and I've specified the URL of my WSUS server, which in my case, my WSUS server is my site server. So make sure I spelled that correctly, and publish that. All right, and before we tell our client to do anything, So that's configured properly. Let's go validate that we are successfully published. We're up to 91K in that log file, so we are good. I apologize for those of you that can't read Notepad and like SMS Trace. I can't read SMS Trace. I like Notepad. And since I have the mic on, I'm in charge. So we're doing what I want. So there we go. Successfully published and approved the client package. So this is the GUID for our client, our CCM setup, our client push. Yes, the question is it possible to upgrade clients using this method? And yes. So you can use this method to upgrade SMS 2003 clients to Configuration Manager as well. Yes, very good question. So we are published. So I'm type something in there. I don't want to save the log file. So now I'm just going to tell my client to update policies. Get context. GP update / force. So I have it update the group policy that I implemented. And then we will tell it to initiate a scan. So once it says it's refreshed policies, it knows about the point to go to find for WSUS. Next time it was configured to do a WSUS scan, it would go ahead and do its scan and install the client. We're not going to wait because that's usually, what, 3 a.m. or something like that? So we're going to go ahead and force it to scan now. So WUA client / detect now. That's going to force that client to do a scan process. That's going to take a while because the first thing it's going to do, it's going to go ahead and update the Windows Update Agent, because this is a default Windows Server 2003 SP2 installation, and it doesn't have Windows Update Agent 3.0 installed. So the first thing it has to do is go to my Windows Update server, find the Windows Update Agent 3.0 so it can talk to that server, install it, and then it will go ahead and do its scan process, find our code. So we will let him sit there momentarily. We'll come back and verify that he's running. So while we're sitting here, let's go to our client computer. This is our Windows 2000 client. And unless it's already done, which I highly doubt, we'll go back to Task Manager. We'll see that CCM Setup is running again. So we ran CCM Setup. It installed bits 2.0, required a reboot. We rebooted. And now if we kick off Task Manager, we should see, yep, there's CCM Setup running again. So it will then finish off the installation. It'll download those rest of the components it needs, install them, then install the client.msi, and eventually it'll come back and it'll send state messages back over to our sites, back to the FSP, into the site server saying, hey, I'm installed now as a client. And we can let's just put him over here. Oh, there's a state message already. So that client has sent a state message saying, hey, I'm in the process of installing now. So when that state message goes away, then if I were to refresh those reports, that failure report would go away, the entry in the failure report, and would be an in-progress report now. But we'll go look at him later on. Okay, so we have that going on. And we'll just check real quick and see if our CCM setup is running there on our member server. So this is the one that was running, remember, did the WSUS installation. So through WSUS install, we got CCM setup running. So that's going to happen automatically. It's going to finish off all its other updates it needs and installing the bits and everything else it needs. And then when it's all done, bits 2.5 actually does require a reboot as well. However, once you install it, it's active enough for us to download the rest of our components. So Windows Update Agent is, at the end of this, going to force a restart of my client computer. And hopefully we'll catch that later on. So he's installing through not through group policy, but through software updates. So that's good. We got 2 for 2. All right, so the next deployment method we want to look at is group policy client deployment. So in SMS 2003, I mentioned earlier, we had client.msi. And we had a number of customers that tried to install clients through group policy utilizing client.msi, which could be done. It could be done. We didn't really support it very well because of numerous reasons. One was there was no command line parameters. So if you just ran client.msi, your client wasn't assigned any site. It was a bare bones client that wasn't assigned. So then you had to go touch each client individually and tell it what site code it was installed to. Or we had the ability of you creating an administrative share of client.msi. So expanding client.msi and then basically repackaging it with command line parameters. So you could do client.msi and it would have built into it SMS site code equals MCM, log level, CCM log level equals 3, max log size and history and so on. You could specify all those. And then you could utilize that for group policy. The problem with that is, if you happen to remove that group policy, it would deinstall the utility that was installed through the group policy, which is client.msi, which would then deinstall your client computer. So you had problems with that. So this is a true method that we have that is fully supported that allows you to deploy clients through Active Directory. There's a couple different things you can do. One is we have a utility called client or CCM setup.msi. This is what you would utilize for your group policy deployments, and I'll show you this in the demo coming up here momentarily. So we'll package up and distribute through group policy CCM setup.msi. You don't need any command line parameters for this normally if you're publishing to Active Directory, because we publish all of our parameters to Active Directory. So CCM setup.msi, we'll go look in Active Directory. What are my command line parameters? Well, some of you are going to say, hey, I can't publish to Active Directory, so now what do I do? So because of that, we actually have, oops, wrong mouse. We have 2 ADM templates. So we have 2 ADM templates for you that can help accommodate those environments where you're not publishing to Active Directory. And I'll show you how to import those 2 templates. They come with the product. One is for client installation settings. So if you want to publish through group policy, install that way, but you're not publishing to Active Directory, you can utilize this ADM template to specify your command line parameters for CCM setup. Works great. The second one is, traditionally clients are assigned to sites through boundaries. In SMS 2003 through roaming boundaries, in Configuration Manager just through boundaries. Well, your boundaries are network-based boundaries, and your boundaries don't necessarily reflect your business needs. So oftentimes our customers have needs to have clients assigned to other sites than what their physical boundaries would dictate they're assigned to. And when you do auto discovery, it's going to go with your boundaries. So we have another ADM template here called client assignment that will allow you to, on an OU basis, use your OUs as your methods of assigning to sites, as opposed to your physical network boundaries. So I'll show you that one as well. I guess I'll show them to you right now. Okay, so let's look and see where we're at. So CCM setup still running on that guy, and our Windows 2000 client is fully installed now. CCM setup's gone away, and CCM is up and running. So we can go ahead and close that. We can go ahead and minimize that. And if we were to go back here, and let's go run that dashboard again. So our dashboard is here. Let's go ahead and do a refresh. And maybe didn't like my F5, let's do it that way. Our failure goes away, and we have 2 computers with status, 1 successfully installed, 1 in progress. So I told you I was getting rid of that 100% failure. So now we're 50% success and 50% in progress. And here it shows us SMS Client 2 is successfully installed, no reboot required. So we already did it for bits. Now we don't have a drill down that shows you what clients are in progress. It's pretty easy to tell. You know what clients you push to. You know the failure report shows nothing, and the success report shows success on 1. So we know where the other client, who the other client is at this point in time. But yeah, we don't have a report that shows you the clients that are in progress, the drill down. So failures, successes, and then just the overall status. Okay, so that's where we stand on those guys. So now we want to do group policy. So group policy, first thing we're going to do is you have to create a share name that includes your package. So I've created a share name called GP install that has CCM setup.msi. That's all you need is a share name, CCM setup.msi, as far as our package. Now obviously you need to have group policy. So let's go, I should have started this earlier and I forgot. So let's go to Active Directory. And I created an OU for my Windows XP client. So I got an OU called XP Systems. I'll just right click him, go to Properties, and then I'll go to Group Policy tab. Don't have any, I'm going to create a new one. And assuming I can type, we'll have something like SCCM client install. See, can't type. Client install. We'll create that group policy, we'll edit it, so we can specify our installation package. Software settings, don't have any installation packages right now. We'll create one, and we'll browse to that share name I created. And we got 1 utility there, so it's pretty simple. It will make it an assigned process. And that is all I need to do. That's all I need to do here. So the client I'm going to use is the Windows XP client. So that's the second one here. So let's go to this client computer, and let's go ahead and tell him to force group policy update. GP update / force. And because this is a software installation package, it's going to require the client to be rebooted. So It's going to pop up here momentarily and say, hey, I need to reboot the client to do that. So we'll say yes to let it go ahead and reboot. And while this guy's rebooting, I'll go back and show you those two ADM templates that you can use. I don't need to use those two ADM templates in my scenario, but in case you do have to, because I am publishing Active Directory, so we'll get our parameters from Active Directory. Uh-oh. That's not good. Oh, that's right. I didn't finish up, did I? So we're there. It's there now, so maybe it was a little premature to run this. My keyboard's not always working. There we go. There we go. That's better. So let him reboot. He's going to go ahead and reboot. I'll try and get back there when I think it's up to the point where you can see it's installing from the command prompt or from the install screen. This is the member server. So this was the group. This was the WSUS install, and the Windows Update agent sees that has flagged that we installed bits 2.5, and bits 2.5 has flagged that it needs a reboot. So I'll just go ahead and tell him to go ahead and restart now. But he's done. You can see CCM setup or CCM exec is running. And if we go look at our state messages, go down here and see if we have more state messages sitting there. So we need to wait for those state messages to get processed. We can look and see where we're at here on our report and see if it has reported in success yet. So still in progress until we get those state messages processed. So when those state messages get processed here, again, every 2 minutes, the last one was 5:30. So it should kick in here another minute. Once those are processed, we'll update that report. So while that's happening, let's go back and look at those two ADM templates. Let's go back to we'll just use the same OU just for grins. And go back to group policy. We'll create a new group policy. And I'll do SCCM client assignment. And we'll edit it. And we'll go to administrative templates. And we'll go ahead and we'll import both those templates, even though, again, I don't need either of them, but I'll import them for you. So they come with the product. They would be on your configuration manager DVD or download in the root folder under tools, then there's ADM templates, config manager ADM templates. So I just copied them into the root folder so I didn't have the whole directory tree here. So we give you two of them, one for assignment. This is the OU-based assignment. So for existing clients to be reassigned to a new site based off of OUs, or for installation of a client. So if I'm installing through group policy, but I'm not publishing Active Directory, I need to supply command line parameters for the site code, for logging, whatever it happens to be. I can do that. So I'll go ahead and import both of them just so you can see what they look like. And we create a new folder here. We see they have configuration manager. Now, one thing you have to go in there and go to view filtering and turn off this option here so you can see both of them. And there's the site assignment. So this is the one where if I have clients assigned to my site today, or they're not assigned to a site, and I want to rearrange the site. I want to give them a different site code. So I could type in MCN. Since mine is MCM, this would be the new site code that this client would get assigned to. So the next time it processes policies, it would go ahead and try and do this assignment process and change the site code that it was assigned to. And then you can have some retry intervals here and how often you're retrying. So that's all there really is for that one. It's just designating the site code you want this client assigned to. And again, this is based off of your OUs. So you got much more granular control over your site assignment than you do with the normal boundaries. And the second one for client deployment, you go ahead and enable it. And then here's your CCM setup command line. Oops, let's go check and see our client. That's the member server. We missed it. We missed him. So hopefully, that seemed awfully fast though, so it's telling me that the group policy didn't work. As it normally sits there for a long time on installing your software, installing SCCM client bootstrap. So either I talked a lot longer than I thought I talked, or my group policy didn't work. And we'll check and see if Task Manager shows CCM setup running. CCM setup, yeah. So I know it's not going to be installed yet, so it won't be CCM exec. It is, okay. It went faster than I thought. So it is running now based off group policies. I was trying to get back there earlier so you could see during the startup phase, it said installing your software and say, I think it says SCCM Client Bootstrap Installation Package is what the name on that installation is. But it is running there through group policy. So back on the site server then, so you would just punch in your parameters here like FSP, FSP equals SMS server and SMS site code equals MCM, whatever parameters you want to use. Again, you use this ADM template if your site's not publishing to Active Directory. If you are publishing to Active Directory, then we've already published these parameters for you. Now, one thing to be aware of, I keep talking about the parameters being published to Active Directory. We only read the information from Active Directory if you run CCM setup with no command line switches. If you run CCM setup with any command line switches, we use those and we don't look at Active Directory. So it's just CCM setup empty, and then we'll use what's in AD. But if you're not publishing to Active Directory, that's where you can use this to specify what your parameters are, since in group policy, you notice there wasn't a possibility of putting any parameters there. So that's what these two ADM templates are for. That's what they'll get you. So that will help you out in your client deployment process. And I actually think let's go look at our reports. And yes, all of our state messages are gone. Let's go look at our dashboard and let's refresh him. And no failures, which is good. I have 3 computers with status, 2 successful, 1 in progress. And so I'm 66% and 33%. And my 2 success clients are SMS Client 2 and SMS Member. You notice that SMS Member still says reboot required. Even though we just rebooted, we just haven't had a state message that says, hey, I've rebooted after the install. I've successfully installed. That's from the bits 2.5 again. So Windows Update Agent saw that flag that it needed to reboot, so went ahead and did that. By then, we'd already sent in our state message that says that reboot's required because I just installed bits 2.5, so that came in earlier. So now we have SMS Clients, the 3rd computer that's being installed, so he's the one that's in progress right now. And when he's done, he'll appear here, and he'll also say reboot required. So even though bits 2.5 installation, it requires a reboot, but it's active enough for us to download the rest of our components. That's why you'll see reboot needed on these guys until the next time they are rebooted, and then that will clear that flag. Okay, I've got 8 minutes. So we have a couple more slides to go through. And the other, I already showed you this ADM template, but the other ADM template we have is for the client assignment. The first one is for client installation, give the CCM setup properties. The next one is the one I showed you, which is for assignment of clients. So it allows you to more granularly control where your clients are assigned instead of network boundaries, which is what your boundaries are, or roaming boundaries in SMS 2003. They're based off of AD sites or IP subnets or IP address ranges, or now with Configuration Manager, IPv6 prefixes that may not match your business needs of where you want those clients to be deployed based on their sites. So you can use this to control through group policy where clients get assigned as they're installed as Configuration Manager clients. And I showed you that already, so I used both the demos in one. Okay, the last type of client installation process is client upgrades. This is the most common in our CAP program. Whenever we're having customers upgrade from SMS 2003 to Configuration Manager, or from Beta 1 to Beta 1 Refresh, Beta 1 Refresh to Beta 2, Beta 2 to RC, this was the most common method they would use for deploying clients, because you have great controls over when this upgrade process happens. You're using software distribution. So you have the normal targeting based off of IP subnets, or OUs, or groups, or address ranges, or whatever you want. So you have great controls in your targeting, and then you have advertisement scheduling. So you know exactly when that process is going to kick off in those clients, provided they're up and running on the network and so on. So you have great controls. Everybody tested out the client push stuff. Most people tested out the WSUS stuff. Not everybody was as interested in group policy, but a lot of customers are. But this is the most common way people did their upgrades through the TAP program. And my guess is the most common way you guys do your client upgrades as well, because you have a lot more control than you do with the client push installation or automated client push or the other methods. You can also do manual installation. You can do automated push by setting the install flag. You can use as the gentleman asked earlier, you can use the WSUS installation method to upgrade clients as well. But software distribution is the most common. So for that, it's a fairly simple process because we include automatically a package definition file for you. So you would go down to software distribution, and then you would go to packages, and you would import a package definition file that we include for you. I probably could speed things up by turning off some of the VPC images now. Let's see, that's our demo server. So the Windows XP client is still in the installation phase, and we know Windows 2000 already succeeded. So, all right, so we include a package definition file for configuration manager client upgrades, just like we did in SMS 2003 for their upgrades. So you had a package definition file there. Close a little bit of this stuff, but I don't think that's going to make him run any faster. I don't know where my admin gone to. He's not responding. So I may have to, hopefully not, but I may have to kill this and restart the admin console. If he's not going to cooperate here momentarily. We do have a package definition file. You import it, and it's got one command or one program associated with that package definition file. There we are. That one program is the client upgrade, so package from definition. You'll see that we include 5 package definition files in with the product. The first 4 of those are for device management, so deploying Windows devices, and the last one of those 5 is for your client upgrade. I told that guy to close. There we go. And so we'll see here in the list of package definition files, the first 4 devices, so installing a client transfer, installing a device itself, the client agent on a device, inventory extension, and removing those. And we want the configuration manager client upgrade. One thing to note is that your source path is going to have changed from SMS 2003. So you do want source files, but the path is going to be different from what you're used to. In SMS 2003, you would browse to SMS client i386. Now with Configuration Manager, we have binaries not just for x86, so we also have binaries for x64 and IA64. So your source path is going to be program files, Microsoft Configuration Manager, and then client. And you notice here's IA386, IA64, and x64. And we have common binaries for all of those. So you need to go to the Configuration Manager client folder, and that's your source path. And so you'll import that package definition file. And then you may or may not want to make a change to your package definition file. You have one program that's built in by default, and that one program is going to be your client upgrade program. And that client upgrade program does have command line switches on it. So if you want to utilize the information in Active Directory, you'll have to go in there and clear out that command line. Because again, remember I just told you a couple minutes ago that we ignore Active Directory published values if you have any command line parameters on CCM setup. And this is the command line we're kicking off as CCM setup. So if you want to use AD parameters, instead of punching them here, you'd have to go in there and clear those out. And as soon as my program appears, I will show you that. But from here, it says Advanced Client Silent Upgrade, because we're upgrading advanced clients, because we're upgrading from SMS 2003 to Configuration Manager. And we don't call them advanced clients anymore, but they were in SMS 2003. So we'll go look at the program properties here for 1 second. And then it will be time to wrap us up. So here's our command line. And it will show you that our command line is CCM setup / no service, and then SMS site code equals auto. If you want to utilize your Active Directory parameters, you would need to clear out then get rid of the no service as well. So if you just run CCM setup, then it will go ahead and kick off those parameters from Active Directory. If you have anything after CCM setup, any other switches, we ignore Active Directory and we use what you have in this command line. We do put here in the comment for you important, please refer to the product documentation to figure out which command line parameters you really need to run, whether it's manual here or whether you're punching them in Active Directory. And we have a great section in there, just search your product documentation on CCM setup, and it goes through all the CCM setup command line switches as well as all the client.msi command line switches. So you would go ahead and modify this if you need to, adjust it as necessary. Then you would distribute this to your distribution point, create an advertisement, and then off you would go in your client deployment process and using software distribution. And that's all stuff you guys already know. So I don't need to walk you through that process. But so you just put it on distribution point and then create your advertisement, and then clients would get upgraded as they retrieve the policy, and they would go ahead and run at the whatever your sign time was. And you would make this an assigned program so that it was happening at midnight or whatever time frame is appropriate for you. So I'll go ahead and cancel this because we already know how to put packages on distribution points. So the last thing we'll do, let's go see if our client, our Windows XP client is done. He's still running. So he's still running. So I was hoping we'd get to the point where our last client was installed. I don't have a client to upgrade anyway because I've got those 3 clients already installed, or the third one is installing. My site server is not a client, so I can't use software distribution to upgrade it because it's not an existing client, so I can't use software distribution. But I was hoping we'd get the last one installed so that we can go ahead and see all 3 of them here, but we see one in progress and the other 2 were successfully installed. So anyway, that is what still 3, 2, and 1. That is what client deployment looks like in Configuration Manager. So a lot of new options for you. A couple of tips before you guys walk out. You notice that you saw BITS 2.0 required a reboot. You saw that BITS 2.5 said it needs a reboot even though it didn't have to, other than through the Windows Update Agent stuff, or through WSUS push. You might want to consider pre-installing some of these components, specifically BITS, so you don't have to worry about any reboots. So pre-deploy BITS 2.0 on Windows 2000 or BITS 2.5 today on your Windows XP boxes. And by the time you get around to upgrading your clients, you'll have rebooted the clients numerous times, so you won't have to worry about that. Ensure Active Directory is extended. If you have Active Directory extended, your life is a lot easier. You can utilize the parameters from Active Directory. Then you don't have to worry about somebody typing it in wrong, or your admin typing it wrong on the client push parameters, or your admin typing it wrong on the client upgrade parameter switch. Highly recommended that you have a fallback status point. Have a fallback status point so you get this reporting stuff that I showed you. Those reports are only available with a fallback status point enabled in your site, and clients know to use that fallback status point. Go in a phased manner. We had one of my top customers deploy 20,000 clients in 2 days. They wound up getting backlogs of state messages, partly because of a problem we had in Beta 2, a Beta 2 issue, but they had backlogs of state messages there that caused some delays in processing. So it's highly recommended that you do a phased approach. Don't deploy 20,000 clients in a day. Generally, our recommendation would be a few thousand clients in a single day. So maybe 3,000 to 4,000 to 5,000 clients somewhere in there. But don't go blowing out 10, 20,000 clients in a day. It's awfully aggressive and it causes backlogs with state messages. After you've done your initial testing, test out to make sure that you understand how Configuration Manager is working. So send out a software distribution job to make sure that your clients can access the MP and they can access the policies. So make sure you do that. So there you've seen all the client deployment methods. Hopefully you got to get enough information and experience on those that you have some good ideas how to do your own upgrades. With that, you guys have a great rest of the day and a great last day of the conference tomorrow. Thank you all.